December 1944. The Western Front was supposed to be quiet. Men spoke of home, of Christmas, of the war's end that felt close enough to touch. In the frozen Ardennes, the snow fell in perfect silence, a silence thick enough to hide the sound of engines waking in the dark. Beneath the trees, frost glazed every rifle, every helmet. Letters from wives lay folded inside damp coats. They believed the fight was behind them, but in the woods beyond, something massive was stirring, a storm that had slept 5 long years was about to rise again. Fade of wind, crackle of ice. The soldiers called it the Ghost Front. Soon, it would become hell. 0400 hours, December 16th. Fog thick enough to swallow sound. German officers huddled over maps lit by cigarette ends. Their orders: strike fast, strike silent, reach Antwerp. Outside, engines coughed awake beneath camouflage nets. Snow muffled the tracks of hundreds of tanks waiting for dawn. In nearby villages, farmers woke to the rumble of distant thunder, only it wasn't thunder. Explosion. Then another. The bombardment began at 5:30. 1,600 artillery pieces fired at once. Trees split like bones. The forest caught fire, then vanished beneath smoke. Within minutes, American lines were gone, replaced by disbelief. We thought the Germans were finished, one private wrote later. Then the ground started to shake. From the fog, the panzers came, columns of steel grinding through ice, engines roaring like beasts in pain. Villages disappeared under shellfire, roads clogged with fleeing convoys and burning trucks. The snow turned gray with ash. A radio operator shouted for help that would never come, his voice cut off mid-sentence. Elsewhere, a squad of paratroopers crawled into the forest, their breath visible, their fear louder than the guns. The Germans called it Unternehmen Wacht am Rhein, Operation Watch on the Rhine. For the Allies, it would soon have another name, the Battle of the Bulge. Chaos is not noise, it's silence after an order that no longer makes sense. American convoys choked the icy roads, headlights off, engines stalling in the snow. At crossroads near St. Vith, men fought not just the enemy but the cold itself. Frostbite gnawed faster than bullets, radios failed. Maps tore. Commanders vanished. A medic knelt beside a soldier frozen mid-movement, eyes open, hands still gripping a photo of home. Hold the line, someone whispered, but there was no line anymore, only scattered pockets of resistance. Somewhere in the smoke, an officer prayed for daylight. He got fire instead. By December 20th, the town of Bastogne was surrounded. 7 roads led in. All 7 were cut. Inside the perimeter, about 10,000 men. Outside, nearly 50,000 Germans. Supplies fell from the sky, ammo, food, morphine, letters that never reached their names. Snow became both shield and shroud. Paratroopers dug foxholes until their hands bled. Civilians hid in cellars, counting each explosion like heartbeats. When the German envoy arrived with a demand to surrender, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe looked up from his typewriter, smirked, and typed one word: nuts. The message was delivered. The Americans would fight on. Somewhere above the town, a lone flare cut through the sky, blue, cold, defiant. Then came the blizzard. Visibility dropped to meters. Temperatures sank to -20, even the dead froze upright. Soldiers slept standing, rifles in hand, because lying down meant never waking up. Boots cracked. Blood turned to dust. In makeshift hospitals, nurses warmed morphine with candle flames. Chaplains whispered prayers they barely believed. One diary read, "We are ghosts now, walking between shells." And still, the shelling never stopped. For 30 days, the front remained locked in ice and pain, a world made entirely of white and fire. The men didn't fight for victory anymore, they fought to see the next sunrise. Low drone fades to silence. Time stopped meaning anything. Days blurred into one long, frozen hour. Watches had frozen too, their glass cracked, their hands forever pointing to dawn. Soldiers stared at those hands and wondered if the world outside still existed. In trenches, they whispered stories of home, of girls they hadn't seen in years, of jukebox songs fading from memory. On the other side, German troops waited as well, tired, starving, half believing in the cause. Smoke mixed with snowflakes, even the air seemed exhausted. Time itself froze with them, the narrator says, but it isn't poetry, it's the truth. every second stretched until it broke, then, at last, a crack of sunlight. The clouds that had grounded the Allied Air Force for weeks began to part. From that light came a sound the soldiers had prayed for: engines, dozens of P-47 Thunderbolts slicing through the blue. The sky was alive again. They dove through valleys, unleashed fire on German columns crawling along icy roads. Convoys exploded, bridges collapsed, and the frozen armor of the Wehrmacht began to melt under heat and terror. It was as if the heavens themselves had joined the fight. One survivor said, "For the men in Bastogne, it meant hope, a sound that meant they were not forgotten." The new year came with mud and vengeance. American tanks rolled east, treads grinding through the snow's crust. Columns advanced where days before only corpses had lain. The counteroffensive was relentless. What had begun as Hitler's final gamble was collapsing into ruin. Villages were retaken, crossroads reopened, prisoners marched west under gray skies. The Germans called it Rückzug, retreat. But even as the Allies pushed forward, the cost was staggering. Every mile reclaimed was paid in frozen bodies. Every victory echoed with the names of those who would never go home. We were winning. One lieutenant wrote, but it didn't feel like it. Inside the medical tents, the smell of blood and ether hung heavy. Nurses moved like ghosts between rows of stretchers, whispering words of comfort to men who couldn't hear them. Some had no faces left, others clutched frost-blackened hands that would soon be gone. In corners, chaplains read letters aloud for soldiers too weak to speak. The camera would linger here, not on battle, but aftermath. The quiet that follows horror isn't peace. It's shock. Those who survived would carry the sound of artillery forever, inside their dreams, inside their bones. They would return home, but part of them would stay behind, buried beneath the snow of the Ardennes. January 25th, the Bulge in the Allied line was gone. The German advance had failed. Hitler's last card had been played, and it had shattered in his hands. But victory did not look like triumph. Entire forests lay flattened, villages erased. The land itself seemed wounded. Generals counted the numbers: 80,000 American casualties, 100,000 German. The snow began to melt. Beneath it, the truth emerged: frozen faces, open eyes, helmets half buried in mud. A war that had started with parades and promises now felt like a curse. The soldiers no longer asked when it would end, they wondered who would still be alive to see it. Spring returned slowly to the Ardennes. The trees grew again, hiding the scars. Farmers plowed over shell craters. Children played where tanks had burned, and yet, if you stand there in the early morning fog, you can still feel it, that hum beneath the ground, the whisper of engines that never really stopped. The dead do not speak, but their silence speaks for them. They were 19, 20, 21. They froze, they fought, they vanished. Some were found decades later, their dog tags rusted, their stories forgotten until now. History does not end. The narrator says quietly, it echoes. The Battle of the Bulge was Germany's last offensive, and the Allies' final test of endurance. It was not about glory, it was about survival, and in that frozen hell, amidst snow and fire, humanity revealed both its worst and its best. Soft ambient music rises, fade to black.